Hi, Shankar. Thank you so much for taking our time for this interview. For the viewers, may we request you to please share your story in your own words?
Yeah, for sure. So my background's pretty, like it's pretty general. Like I'm coming from sort of an engineering background. So I went to Manipal for my electronics engineering. I graduated in 2012, and I always liked building products. So it's in general like just building things as an engineer, I suppose. So I ended up with Robert Bosch for a few years. I think about 3 years roughly for engineering, and I realized that I don't really enjoy coding all that much. It was okay, but I didn't really enjoy the work, and also there was a lot of lack of visibility into like whatever I'm doing, like the engineering work that I'm doing. I don't really know where it ends up at from a product perspective. So that's when I realized that I'm a better fit for the business side of things and not the engineering side of things. So that's how I ended up finding, like an MBA as sort of like an alternative to get into the business side of things. And I was like all the other students, right? I was just trying to find my space on the business side of things. So then I got into the B school, I came to America, then I got an internship with Dell, which was sort of like my first transition into product management. So that's when I started to talk to people here, I started to kind of gauge what the roles are for MBA students, like product marketing, product management, there is sales, like demand planning, analytics, and so on. And I realized that like product management is the closest to what I would like to do. So then I kind of started aggressively going after that title or those job postings in particular. So I was fortunate enough to get an opportunity with Dell in 2015, and I interned with them. I got an offer for full time, came back, and I worked there for about 4 years with Dell. That was fun. Like we did a lot of fun projects and product launches and everything with Dell. And then recently I moved to Adobe for the last about 6 months now. So it's been a new role. So I've been ramping up with the new job and products and everything. So it's been fun.
That's actually amazing. So, in your opinion, what are a few factors or actions that you took made a difference?
I mean, there's no magic bullet. Like, I don't think I did anything, special that other people did not. Like, a couple of things that I did focus on. One is networking. Like, when we come from India in particular, like the way recruiting works in America is very different, and I was not used to it. And I'm sure, like most students, are not. Here, recruiting happens on a relationship basis. It's not just about your skills, and it's not just about whether you say the right things at the interview, right? It's not just about that. It's also about your relationship with the company, with the recruiters, and so on. And that's an aspect that I learned after coming here. So I really focused on networking. And the other part is like practicing interviews as a whole. Like being able to do the job is a different thing, but interviewing is a different skill on its own. So I feel like that's something that a lot of people miss. And I missed it too when I started. So I learned it the hard way. So for folks who are coming in, I would say that, like focusing on interviews early in the game would really make a big difference for them.
Okay. So, with the benefit of hindsight, what are a few mistakes you believe you committed in the process?
So like with the job hunt and everything, I think few things that I did not do is so basically interviews are either case questions or a lot of behavioral questions. Like when I say behavioral, it's things like, tell me about a time when you encountered like a conflict with another team and things like that. So questions like that, we do prepare answers, like when you prepare for interviews, you do prepare answers, you write it down, you review them and so on. But we don't really say it out loud. And I think not just me, like all my friends in B school too, like they write it down, but they don't say it out loud. And so you're basically saying it out loud the first time at the interview, right? So which is so much pressure on yourself and you end up not presenting it the right way. So I think one of the things that I would have definitely done is practice those a lot earlier. Now I started doing it when I started to look for a different job, but I did not do it when I was in B school, which I think would have made, all the difference. And secondly, I would say, like go after any company that you really want to go after, because here there is not really, I know in India there are lines like, oh, if you're not from IIT, you can't really go to, a Google or like a Microsoft, things like that. Here the lines are pretty blurry. So if you're good and if you have the skills, you can go anywhere. You really can. And if you are interested in a company, I would say like go for it. Right? I was pretty conservative when I started, like with my job search, but I feel like you don't have to be, right? Like a lot of people are conservative, and I don't think you have to be. You can go after what you need. If you network and talk to the right people, you can get in.
Right. Okay. So, would you like to describe your interview experience with the B school?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty straightforward. Like now that I look back and now that I've interviewed quite a bit, the B school interviews are honestly very rudimentary, right? They're very basic. All they're trying to gauge is they're just trying to see if you are someone people would like to be around. That's all they're looking for. They're not really looking for skills or anything. They're just checking to see if you are a person who people would like to work with, right? Are you employable essentially? Like, are you good at communicating? Are you good at telling stories
Right.
in a way that everybody can understand, right? Like
Okay.
we all have stories, we all have done a lot from a work perspective, but
Mm,
not everybody would articulate it the right way. So I think those are sort of the
mm,
basic things you're looking for.
okay.
So I feel like if you can just articulate your experiences in a simple way, that in itself goes a long way for MBA interviews. I don't think that is really a big hurdle. If you
Okay.
have the right GMAT scores and everything, I'm pretty sure like a lot of people can
Okay.
go through the interview process fairly easily.
Right. All right. Okay. So, can you tell us more about your MBA experience?
Yeah, like MBA experience was fun, as in I wouldn't say I use a lot of it at the job because, it's exactly like engineering, like what you learn in school and what you actually do
Right.
is completely different. But what it does is like I would say two things. One is it gives you a structure of thought. Like when you approach a problem, like you think of it a certain way and there is a methodical way of how you would solve it. So I think I got that structure from B school. And secondly, the network, right? So all the people that I know in
Yeah.
all these different companies, which enables me to go from one place to the other, one role to the other. That is because of the people I know and the relationships that I've built.
Okay.
And that happens in B school. And that's probably the most critical thing, right? Which we are not used to. Like when I say we, I mean, folks from India are not used to because I've never done this before coming here. It's just
Yeah.
brand new for me. So that's something that you need to prepare for and, kind of the earlier you understand that, the better, because the recruiting starts very quickly. As soon as you land here, it starts to go. So yeah, I would say that's sort of my MBA experience. And from a classes and curriculum perspective, like you can learn the basics. I mean, if you just want to learn the theory, you can read a book. You don't really need to do an MBA, right? You're
Right.
doing an MBA to get a job. You're doing an MBA to get the network. So I would say those are the main things. Like education-wise, you can get the same information like on YouTube or by reading books. I don't think you need to go to school for that.
Right. Okay. So, can you please tell us more about your job search experience during the MBA and what tips will you give to the future candidates?
Like job search, like the easiest way to convert is like go through the internship process. Like that's typically the easiest path to, getting a full-time job, right? Because when you go for full-time interviews, it gets a lot harder. So you starting with an internship,
Right.
doing a good job there and getting an offer is sort of the traditional way of getting a job. So I would definitely endorse that. And other than that, it's basically, I would say, like what I did was I made a list of 5 to 6 companies that are of my interest, like who are hiring for like product management roles. And also since we're international, we also have to think about whether they hire internationals or not, right? So that's another thing. And they all have very unique interview patterns, right? Like Amazon interviews a certain way, like Dell interviews a certain way. So I think just talking to people who have already done this before, like your seniors or college mates or, professors usually don't know as much, but students usually do. And kind of preparing for those interviews in a unique way kind of helps. But yeah, that's what everybody would do. Like there's nothing special there. And the other thing I would say is, like I said before, like saying your stories out loud and making sure you do, mock interviews with friends or seniors really helps. Like the more you do, the better. I didn't do enough, to be honest, but if you're coming in newly, I would recommend you start as early as possible and do as many as you can.
Uh,
Because once you get confident, you can walk into an interview because it takes time to build that.
yeah, that is
Right.
true. So, can you tell us about your post MBA journey? Like, how did the entire pre-application phase, as well as your MBA experience, contribute to your growth post MBA?
Right. Like after MBA, like I think it's the like once you start the job, it's sort of like a different journey altogether, but it really helps to have that structure, like I mentioned before,
Right.
because you're just thrown into the deep end. Like when you start the job at this level, they would just give you problems and they expect you to kind of drive it end to end.
Mm-hmm.
It's not sort of like an engineering job where you know the task and you do it. Right? This is, you kind of own a problem and you have to find a way to solve it.
Right.
So it's a little bit more involved. So if you don't have a structure of thought, it gets very overwhelming. And then like post MBA, I think I also started thinking about what kind of products I want to work on. Like, so consumer facing, or should it be this industry or that industry? So you can get into all of those, I started getting into all of those thought processes like soon after the MBA. And the network definitely helps. Like the people that I know, that I would say is the most important thing, right? Like they're the ones who kind of help me understand, okay, what does product management look like in Adobe or in Microsoft? And like talking to them is what like enables me to think about, okay, that's a better fit for me than this one. And that's how I end up like switching jobs, right? So I would say I would really hold on to those people and like and maintaining those relationships, right? That's very crucial.
Okay. So, according to you, what are a few common mistakes that all the MBA applicants must avoid?
Like school applications, it's a little bit, hard for me to say because I've only applied to like, like 5 schools and I got into 3, I didn't get into 2. So I don't really have a huge sample size to like give advice there.
Right.
So I'm sure like you folks know a lot better than I do. For job applications, I would say like basic etiquette when it comes to interviewing, like when you go into an interview, it's not sort of like a question and answer situation here. It's more of a conversation. Like that's how most of the interviews are. So having that cadence, like it's something that I was not used to, right? I was used to like, oh, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. That's just how interviews are for me.
Right.
But here it's more of, okay, let's talk and let's see if we like you or not, right? That's what it is. So coming prepared and like, being ready to just have a conversation. So I think it takes time to be okay with that process. So I would say I would avoid answering questions like we would for an engineering job, right? Because I did that. I made the same mistake when I started, and I would recommend thinking about not doing that. So if you want to avoid it, I would say the best way is to kind of like see other people answering the same questions, like other MBA aspirants or other product managers.
Right.
There are a lot of resources out there where you can actually see how people answer. So that would really help you understand, okay, this is how you think about it, right? And another thing for interviews, I would say is I used to start speaking as soon as the question is asked, right? I don't really take a break when I'm asked a question. But for like, since this is a conversation, it's perfectly okay to say, like, give me 2 minutes. I need to think about this and then come back with a better answer. And it's completely acceptable. And I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but you can do that and it's totally fine, right? You're better off having a good answer 2 minutes later than a bad answer right away. So just like, calming the nerves and asking for time is acceptable. And I would say do that more often than not, right? I learned it much later, like post my first job. So if you're new in the space, I would say like start doing it right off the bat and it would be more beneficial.
All right. Okay. So, what would be your final message and suggestion to all the viewers watching this video?
I mean, like I would say just, like you can aim really high here,
Right.
especially when it comes to job search. And so I would say, yeah, don't be conservative when it comes to looking for jobs or the companies that you're aspiring to be working for. And second thing is like really, really put a lot of focus on the network because that's what you're getting away with. Once you graduate, what you have is the network, like what you study. You can always study more, but the network, you can't really get it anywhere else. So I would focus on that and also focusing on the interviewing process itself, which is sort of something that gets neglected along the way. Like a lot of folks focus on improving the resume and so on, but like practicing interviews and like knowing how to have a conversational interview is very important.
Yes.
So the earlier you focus on these things, I think the easier your job search is going to be like later on, right? Not just for your first one, like for your future job searches, if you want to switch and so on. And yeah, so yeah, that would be my final message. And, like I hope everybody has like an easy time, going through this process. I know it's pretty nerve-wracking, but it's not that bad. It's definitely doable.
I think it's totally worth it, because all's well that ends well.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shankar, for giving your suggestions and all your tips. I think your advice is going to help a lot of other students in their journey to success.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, take
Thank you.
care.